Hey, sweet mama. Welcome back to another episode of Mama Mindset. I'm your host and creator, Amy Cawthron. And today's episode, I'm very excited to bring you my sweet friend, Sherysse. And if you guys remember, Sherysse and Amy were the co-host of the Evolution of Mom podcast. And last week, I had Amy on to discuss all things period, all things hormone. And this week, I thought it would be really fun to bring you Sherysse. Sherysse has really leaned into her own truth in exploring this femininity and the solo goddess within. And a lot of people, what we have found in hers and in my conversation with her is that a lot of women are very turned off by this. We're all still working on our self-care journeys. It's very difficult to go from not taking care of ourselves to just absolutely diving into this extreme femininity and really embracing who we are as women. And she bridges the gap for us. She talks about that. She talks about her own journey and what she's gone through. And it's incredibly inspiring to me as a person who has always really leaned into the masculine side. We talk about finding that balance. How do you use your masculine energy as well as your feminine energy to accomplish your goals and find your motivation and get things done? And there is a way to do it. Every single person is different. And we talk about that in the episode too. We talk about some tough moments with Sherysse in this journey that she's been on and how it's kind of rubbed people the wrong way, but where the truth lies in that for us as women. So I know that this is a little bit of a hard conversation to have, especially if you're early on in your self-care journey and just learning how to take care of yourself again in little steps. And we really genuinely cover that. We don't dive right into the extreme side of finding that inner feminine goddess, but we really bridge that gap in this conversation. So I encourage you to grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, take some notes. You're going to be inspired by some of the things that we say. Things are going to come up in your own mind for you. Maybe you aren't inspired by some of the things that I've done or some of the things that Sherysse has done. Maybe things align with you differently and you have this aha moment of something that you can try, something that you can explore. But I want you to write that down. And again, the most important part of all of this is that you take action steps. You take some steps forward in what you find inspiration in from this podcast. I don't create these podcasts for you to just listen to and then go blindly into your days without actually taking steps forward. I created this podcast to inspire you, to encourage you to move forward, to take that first step. So write something down and then move forward with it. So grab a cozy beverage and join me in this conversational journey with Sherysse. Hi, Sherysse. Welcome back.
Hi, Amy. I'm so excited to be back here. It's been a long time since I've even been in front of a mic. So I'm super excited to be back and talking to you and catch up. I mean, it's been quite a few months, I think.
It's been a few months. Yeah. I had you guys on early in the show. And for our listeners, I have Sherysse Morris on. And last week you heard Amy Lenius on, and they were the co-hosts of the show Evolution of Mom. And we had them on and we talked about a lot of stuff in that podcast episode. I know before we were trying to keep it like to about a half hour, 45 minutes. And we looked down, it was like well over an hour, like, oh, shoot. But now you guys have gone through some beautiful changes, all for the good, all positive. Amy's really leaning into that podcasting space and all things hormones and things that really light her up. And you're leaning into some incredible space as well. So I'm just really excited to have you on and to talk about that side. So where are you at in your journey right now? What do you have going on?
Well, I've been really leaning into kind of feminine energy, pleasure and desire and play, and learning how to like embrace those, find like the beauty and, the desire and everything that we kind of shut ourselves down, especially as being a mom. I find we get so caught up in like I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, that we lose that like beauty of the moment. And so really kind of leaning back into that. And mine kind of, it's been a process of a journey from, ending my marriage to now that I've really started to find this like feminine flow, because I've been in trauma and survival mode pretty much my whole life. Mm-hmm. So the more that I open up into this space, the more that I recognize a lot of women desire it as well. But it's interesting because it comes off in this like, it scares women because being too sexy or being too sensual or being too seen is a scary thing for women. So I want to help women own that like beauty and that sexual desire and that, sensuality that every woman is.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because before we started recording, we were talking about like the issues for women, especially moms with young children, is we have to first dive back into self-care. And then from there, it seems like from there we can grow, and self-care can really evolve into this sexuality and sensuality within ourselves, and learning to truly love ourselves, not just kind of take care of ourselves like a little bit on the surface level, but to like really dive deep into who we are as women. But it seems like that first step is self-care, and we're so lacking in that. And there's really, I think that fear comes from the fact that there's not a lot of in between. So you either like read a book or listen to a podcast or read a blog on self-care, or you read a book called Pussy, which we've talked about, and it's just like, holy, yeah, in your face. You're like, whoa, I don't even know where to start with this. This is way too much. Now I'm totally turned off. And it like absolutely does the opposite. So to me, it seems from the outside looking in, what you're really allowing women to do within your work is see both sides and kind of see the transition from this is kind of where I started, and then here's the growth and development that I went through, to now really leaning into this very sensual, very sexual solo goddess, which I think is amazing. That's the handle of your Instagram page. And I think, how long has that journey? I'm curious, like, when did you kind of start that journey, and how long has that kind of taken you? And I know it's not ending, it's not done, but from when you started to where you are now.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like the journey is been my 38 years. And I can look back on that and really, like, I just did a post recently about divorce and that separation, and both grieving and celebrating, because it was a macro moment in my life that was such a big changing moment, and I wouldn't be here without that moment. But for me, this journey and the solo goddess kind of came to be a year ago, and I didn't even know what it was when I first started, but it just kind of hit me when COVID started and everything was locked down. I was single, and I still am, and I had sat here for 2 months kind of feeling empty, and kept going into like my closet and looking at things, and I was like, oh, there's this pretty dress in there, or this pretty lingerie, and there's this pretty stuff that I just don't have space to wear. And I'd always, we'd only ever put on lingerie or sexy lingerie when, we're trying to please our partner or please our husband, instead of actually wearing it for ourselves. And I had kind of just got to this point that I was like, I'm so tired of wearing baseball hat and sweatpants. I'm going to get dressed up, even though the world was shut down. Like, it was in the 2 months that, everything was shut down. And I put on a dress, I did my hair, I did my makeup, and I ordered a dinner from Cactus Club, and I had a bottle of wine and dessert, and I laid it out on a blanket in front of me and gave myself a date. I did a photo shoot in the tub. I just totally treated myself. And I realized that, like, I don't have to wait for a partner to treat me like the way that I deserve to be treated. Because we talk about self-love all the time, and, you can't find your partner until you love yourself. And you're like, well, what does that mean? And most of us don't really love ourselves, and we don't really dig into those shadows. But when you start being your own best partner, then you start attracting other amazing things into your life. And that's what I did. I desired it. I wanted to go out on a date. So I took myself out. And I continue to take myself out on dates. I want to wear sexy lingerie, so I wear sexy lingerie. Like, it's just stepping into that space of actually being like, you know what, I deserve this, and I don't need somebody else to give it to me.
I think it's an interesting shift in a mindset too, because, and we talk about that a lot on podcasts, on this podcast, is just that mindset shift. Because I think about, like, I have not even remotely close to where you are on your journey, but I'm super inspired by what you're doing, and I'm constantly like inspired by it and kind of just leveling myself up in that way. But I've shared this story before, but a couple of months ago when we were on our anniversary trip, I bought a really pretty nightgown at Target. Just Target. I mean, I didn't buy like an expensive, lingerie, but I had choices, right? I had like the comfy sweatpants with the shirt, or I had a beautiful nightgown. And it's not anything revealing. It's not lingerie, but I was like, I want to wear that. I want to wear that to bed. And it had nothing to do with what Brad would think of me in it. It was what I wanted for myself. I wanted to feel the silkiness on my skin. I wanted to look pretty when I got ready for bed at night. And I just want to feel feminine and like a woman and sensual for literally myself. There was not even 1 ounce of me that was like, I'm going to buy this because I want Brad to think that I look good in this. It was for me. And that was a huge shift for me. That right there, it just shifted because then what happens, what's so powerful about this is then you attract other people to you because you're attracted to yourself. Not even attracted. Maybe I didn't explain that right. But you love yourself enough to want to do things to take care of yourself and just feel good. And then that actually attracts people to you. I mean, I know I can see it from Brad. Like he's more attracted to me when I'm loving myself.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting shift in perspective and mindset.
The feminine is such a magnet. When the feminine is in her glory, she is just attracting everything. And everybody's got both masculine and feminine in us, but we tend to lean a lot heavier into that masculine, right? And that's like I go should, I have to do. And we don't recognize our truth so often because we're stuck in this space of I got to do. And we guilt and shame ourselves into motion. But that feminine, when she's sitting there and she's feeling beautiful, like how often do you like all of a sudden your confidence is through the roof when you're wearing something sexy, right? Or you get a nice blowout and you're walking around like you own the world. And those moments that's when the feminine is so attractive, right? Because she's actually stepping out to be seen, and that magnetizes everybody else around you. And it starts with like taking care of yourself, right? What is best for you is what's best for everybody else, because when you're feeling better, you're feeling confident, more sexy, you're more giving to your partner, all those kind of things. But I think a lot of women don't actually even recognize what their needs are. And it starts by just treating yourself, right? I was one where with my partners, I'd always take care of my partners first. And being now single and exploring kind of that dating world and stuff, I've now had to lean into what I need and ask for it, having those courageous conversations and leaning into my truth and saying, I really need this right now. But what I recognized is I can get it part way. So physical touch is one of my main love languages. And with my partner that I was seeing for a little bit, I asked him, I was like, I just want to be held. I'm feeling emotionally vulnerable right now and I want to be held. And to me, there's a difference between a touch that's caring and loving, and there's a sexual touch, right? There's a difference. And when I got to his place and he started like caressing me, I could tell there was like a sexual component to it. And I wasn't getting what I needed. And so I conceded and like took care of him first. And then I felt resentful afterwards. Like immediately afterwards, he's like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, I held you and stuff. And I was like, it wasn't in the way that I needed, and I didn't know how to ask for it. And then I tried to take care of you first to then get my needs met. And then, but I felt resentful because then, he fell asleep or whatever. And how often do we do that? Right. We take care of somebody else, hope that our needs are going to be met. They're maybe partially met, but then we feel empty. And then we feel resentful afterwards because we didn't know how to fully ask for it in that moment.
And I think you brought up a really good point in that you actually have to communicate that.
Yes.
You actually have to communicate that and continue to communicate that. And that kind of goes back to like advocation, right? You're advocating for yourself and your needs through communication and letting them know, like, this is what I need for myself right now in physical touch. And it's not like, the sexual strings attached behind it. It's just, I just need you to hold me, or like maybe even just rub my feet or rub my hands or tickle my arm or something. I've been really trying to improve that communication with Brad, like, and like setting a boundary. Like, I know that sounds harsh, but like, I am not in the mood to have sex right now, but what I really, really need is for you to just hold me. And he's literally like, he's the cuddler. So if I tell him like, I just need to be held tonight, he's like, yes, dreams come true.
Yeah.
He gets really excited, but I just have to really communicate like there's no strings attached to this physical touch. But I think as women, we forget to actually communicate that. We forget to vocalize that. And and that's a lack of advocacy that you're having for yourself. And it's not easy. It's easy for us to sit here and talk about it on a podcast, but to actually put it into action is actually, and especially if you've never done it before, really kind of awkward. It's a very awkward conversation to have. But yeah, like even just 2 nights ago, I told Brad, I'm like, I really just want like my feet, I plan a fasciitis, not that anybody like cares about that, but my feet get very, very sore. I'm like, I just would really love it if you just rubbed my feet and we just sat in bed and he's like, and cuddled. Do we get to cuddle? Can I hold you? he's probably going to be so mad that I'm sharing that, but he's not like super, super cuddly guy, but he needs that physical touch more than I do. So communicating that with each other, because he's done the same for me, when I'll go like a couple of days without really like touching him or, like holding him or giving him like a good hug, and embracing him. Because as moms, we tend to get we get touched out. And so he'll say like, I really just need you to give me a hug right now. I'm like, oh yeah, shoot. Like sorry, like I forgot, I've been forgetting to do that, but he communicates that with me. So I think that I think it was really brave of you and wonderful of you to actually do that for yourself, like communicating that.
It's interesting because it did, like, when I was single, I had to figure out how to find ways to give myself physical touch,
Mm-hmm.
because that was such a huge component to how I feel loved. But when you're on your own, how do you feel loved, especially in a pandemic where, I used to play a lot of sports and stuff, so I get a lot of hugs, especially from males.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I was missing that like masculine energy as well. So I had to figure out how to give myself that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because in relationship dynamics, especially, and in the mom world, we get stuck in this give mode, which is actually a very masculine mode, right? It's taking care. And how many moms do you hear like, I just give and I give and I give, and they don't feel like they get anything in return.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting part is, like, I've spent some time talking to some men about their relationships, because the women, like, after having a baby, small children or whatever they just lack that desire. And I said, in my marriage, after my kids, sex seemed like a job. Like, it was like, there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. And it was just one more person that needed something from me. And it seems almost counterintuitive for the masculine, but I'm like, what you need to do is give without expectation of receiving, because there's a lot of men that are like, okay, if I do this and I send them out on a date night, or I send them out with the girls, or I'm giving in the bedroom or whatever it is, then it's going to lead to my pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
But when we are in that giving mode, we have to give without thinking of what we're going to receive afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And as a woman, we have to sit there and be able to just receive. And one of the most beautiful exercises I did was during the Roar program with Pasha.
Mm-hmm.
So Pasha has a therapeutic comedy program. And at the end, we all sat there, and all of us that were in the program together loved on each other. It made me realize how much the feminine and how much women in general don't like to receive, because we're so used to giving.
Mm-hmm.
We had to sit here and take in everybody loving us, like love bombing us, and say, thank you, it's true, after each one. And it was so different. It's so easy to give somebody else love, but to sit there and say, thank you, it's true, and receive it, it almost feels wrong. And that's where I've started to kind of lean into now in that space, is like, if somebody gives you a compliment, thank you, it's true.
Mm-hmm. Oh
and
gosh.
being able to receive
It's
it.
like just listening to it is like awkward for me. I'm like, oh, I'm so shitty at that. I'm always like, no. But and that is completely validating your point as I'm thinking about that. I'm like guilty. And it is something I am more and more aware of. Brad, again, gosh, I feel like I'm talking about Brad a lot this episode. I'm sorry. But he sees that and he's like, I'm giving you a compliment and you just need to say thank you. Because he said something one time and I was like, and I got all like weird and awkward about it. And he's like, you do this every time. Why? And I'm like, I don't know. It feels weird to like receive it. It feels weird to accept it and to acknowledge it. And he's like, well, just accept it because I'm giving you a compliment and telling you look good today. I'm like, shit. Yeah. Okay. I really need to get better about that. So that is very interesting to me. Okay. So I want to back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
So no, that's okay. No. I was I loved this. So I want to kind of go back a little bit. So let's go back to the like self-care and then sort of this in between phase and then the journey kind of that you're on now. So what did that look like kind of in the beginning and then versus like maybe what that looks like now? Can you kind of give us a picture of the difference between like self-care and like maybe some actual tangible things? Like what can you do that's self-care, but then what can you do within this like solo goddess journey that you're on now?
Yeah, so it's definitely developed over time, and I have my different moments of self-care, and
Yeah.
it looks very differently because I feed my feminine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning of the journey, when I was in survival mode, finding just moments for myself were the most important part. So for me, it's in the morning before my kids get up. I get from 6 till 7, and then they go to bed at night, and I get from 8 till 9. And
Mm-hmm.
those are moments just for me. And I'll read a book, I'll meditate, I'll do some of the things that, sometimes it's easier to let things go, like meditation,
Mm-hmm.
because, if we're stuck in a stressful point. But I always try and find a moment for myself, whether it's just even sitting down with a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got consistently good at that, I was like, okay, this is feeling good. This is feeling good. And I know that I need to take this care. But it worked into this desire to find play and find pleasure and find joy in my day. Because I've had a lot of trauma in my childhood, and when I try and look back of like moments that I can truly find joy, I haven't found a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've been really disconnected and disassociated. And so I was like, I want to be able to play. Like I literally Googled how to play, how to be
Mm-hmm.
more playful, because I didn't know. It seemed weird, but I also knew that I had 2 boys that were desiring a mom that wanted to play
Mm-hmm.
and play with them. And so I had to figure that out. And so I started leaning into stuff that like, okay, what brought me joy as a child? Did I like I love horses. So riding horses makes me giddy and I could sit there and feed them grass all day long and just
Mm-hmm.
be like, yes. Like,
Right.
so I started taking my kids up to like do touch for horse health and stuff. And that fed kind of that inner child. Started looking at like, okay, what makes me feel pretty? It makes me feel more feminine. And, why do I have to wait for a date just to put on makeup? I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
put on makeup right now and I'm going to feel how that feels. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it moved into like, what feeds my feminine? Because I can look in my closet and like find, clothes that don't show off my shape and clothes that like I can hide behind and like all those kind of things. And the feminine wants to be seen. She wants to be out there. So clothes that are lacy. I started wearing more like, I was like, I need a lacy bodysuit. And I'm gonna go and I just go to the grocery store or go to the mall and I pick up a lacy bodysuit. And
Mm-hmm.
my biggest step was like wearing it on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I was like, like wearing your underwear on the outside seems like so weird, but we wear bathing suits all the time.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not that weird, but wearing something that's lacy actually like inspires me even more.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like so much more. It's nerve-wracking at first, but for
Mm-hmm.
so much more being able to be seen. And I'm like, I'm out there and I am like, look
Mm-hmm.
at me.
Mm-hmm.
And you tend to attract way different energy when you're in that space. So it's kind of evolved over time. Anything that's non-linear as well is really, really good for feeding my feminine. So dancing. There's a really, really great exercise program out there called Kinergy. Tony Robbins promoted it, and it involves like breath work, the elements, and dancing all at the same time. And it's like you move through all these emotions that are, some are sexual, some are just like raw and like powerful. And the more that you move that energy and space through, the more like that feminine flow kind of comes through you, and you get really creative in that feminine flow, right? I mean, how often do we try and create from a space of like, I have to, and nothing comes to us.
Right.
But when we're in this space of like allowing and that space of attracting, then all of a sudden we bring in creativity and we can birth some amazing things into this world.
So I'm curious, we were talking before we were recording too about this idea of masculine and feminine, because you and I are we're very aligned in a lot of like how we approach things and kind of just our past. Cause I also grew up like playing sports. And so there's just kind of this very masculine energy, very masculine drive behind me. So now I'm trying to find that balance between masculine and feminine. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, how have you found your balance, or are you leaning more into your feminine than you are in your masculine? Is there a way to find that balance? What are your thoughts? I want to hear what you think about that. Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, masculine energy is what drives me forward, and it's what really helps me level up. And it's like, but then my feminine energy comes into play, and that's my creativity. So like I use that creativity and like this kind of, I'm going to do what I want to do mentality, but then my masculine energy is, and this is just me, like this is just what I have in my mind, but my masculine energy is like, you're going to get that shit done. Cause like you have this inspiration and now you have to get it done. And that's like my drive to push forward. Am I right in that? Am I correct in that? And then where do you lie? I know that's a lot. I just like dumped a lot on you. Sorry.
No, it's a hard question to answer, because sometimes you can get stuck in this like space of doing nothing, and you need that masculine energy to drive you forward. I think as a feminine, I mean, everybody's different too, where they sit. And I know that a lot of my life, like I felt more feminine, and then there was a period where it got shut down, and I leaned heavily into like sports and all that kind of stuff. And I totally went away from that. I didn't like pink. I didn't like purple. I, never wore makeup in my life. And now the more that I allow that back, I actually realize that my nature is more feminine. It really is. And the more that I surrender and soften into that space, the more that I attract beautiful, like even partnerships that are more masculine to honor that space, and some beautiful feminine sisterhoods and stuff too. So it is difficult, because sometimes you can get caught up on not doing anything. So one of the things through this that I've really started to recognize is that we go through cycles. The feminine ebbs and flows, and to deny that actually denies ourselves. But many of us have never been taught to honor our flow. And this is our menstruation, right? We go through peaks and valleys, and there are moments where we're filled with energy, we're creative, we can get our workouts done. And then there are moments that we want to rest, and we don't honor those moments of rest. We try and push through, and that's where feminine ends up burning out or feeling depleted or feeling empty. So the more that we can get in touch with that, the more that we can allow that space. So there's a period of time shortly after our periods, right after that, right around when we're ovulating, that our testosterone spikes, our HGH spikes, all these hormones like spike right up, and we have a ton of energy. We can do more things. So that is those moments where you're like, let's go, and you can hammer through. But then there are moments as you're coming up to your period where you want to go more internal, and we have that natural ability. We just have to tap in and feel it and honor it. We don't often honor it, right? How often are we sick as women, and we're like, well, we got to keep going, got to hammer through, right?
Yes.
And we feel like a waste of space if we, cuddle up on the couch and have blankets with us. Like, but we need to honor both.
Mm-hmm.
There is a moment for rest and there is a moment to do action.
Mm-hmm. And I think so. This actually really ties into what I talked to Amy about, which is amazing. I'm like, oh, all these connections, yay! But one of the things that we talked about, and I talked about on a previous episode, is scheduling that. I mean, that is such, as moms, we want to be in control. That's something that we want. So one of the things that you can do to control that is actually just scheduling it, like knowing my period starts on the 20th of this month. So 2 days before this, I'm not putting anything on my calendar. I'm going to give myself space. I'm creating space. So it's not just like I'm hoping that I have the space that day. It's actually, no, you have to actually make space for that. And the kids and I are going to stay home that day and we're going to watch a movie and cuddle up on the couch. Or, that's not going to be a night that we go out on a date night, or that's not a night for me that I'm going to schedule a podcast recording necessarily, unless that is what fills you up. But again, it goes back to knowing yourself, advocating for yourself, and then actually just scheduling it, putting it in the schedule, knowing those 2 days before, like creating space to get cozy on the couch or go to bed early, or that stuff. That stuff doesn't magically happen on its own. So you actually have to take the time to do it. Like, hey, mama, I just wanted to take a second and interrupt this incredible conversation with Sherysse to talk to you about something that I do for self-care. One of the things that I absolutely love to do is wash my face. And I know that sounds very strange, but I use Primally Pure skincare product. It is a cleansing oil. And before you shut this off, just hang in there with me. It's not a foaming face wash. It's not a product full of terrible ingredients. It is a very clean cleansing oil. And it is one of my favorite ways to start my day. It's one of my favorite ways to wind down at the end of the day, is using the cleansing oil. I use a warm washcloth to soak my face, and it takes just a couple of minutes. I work on my breathing exercises while I do this. And in the end result of a little bit of intentionality behind using this product is beautiful skin, clean product on my skin. I feel empowered. I feel sexy. I feel good when I'm living my truth in my own skin. So partnering with Primally Pure skincare products gives me the opportunity to give you a 10% discount code. And the discount code at checkout, if you're interested in this product, is Mama Mindset. So head on over to primallypure.com, check out all of their products. I know we've talked about their natural deodorant, we've talked about their dry shampoo. And today we're talking about their cleansing oil, which I can't rave enough. Like I've said in the past, I've used their products for the better part of 5 years, and I absolutely love it. It's the best thing that I could do for my skin. So head on over to primallypure.com, use the discount code Mama Mindset at checkout for a 10% discount today. And with that being said, let's get back to this amazing conversation with Sherysse. I think that's a big thing about what we're talking about here too, is the intentionality that you've had behind all of this self-care and all of this personal growth. Is it has taken dedication, and it's actually taking you doing something, like taking that step forward to explore something. Nah, that didn't feel good. Okay, I'm going to explore this. Actually, that felt really good. I'm going to lean into this a little bit more. And then from there, I'm going to pivot. And so your journey in self-care started with intentionality. It started with one step. And from there, you dove a little deeper. And from there, you dove a little deeper into now you're walking around with lingerie, like it goes from like a simple cup of coffee to like being this solo goddess. So, but it takes intentionality, and it takes actually taking a step forward. Whereas I think a lot of times as moms, we get really stuck in this, well, I hope someday this happens for me. I hope someday I can get back to this. I hope at one point when the kids are older or whatever, I can re-explore myself. But the beautiful thing,
that's great for her. I
yes,
just don't have the time.
Right. The beautiful thing, I know like my listeners are kind of 50-50 working moms and stay-at-home moms, but one of the beautiful things about stay-at-home moms is that you kind of have this space, like you have the mental capacity during the day to kind of explore and lean into maybe something that does feel good because you're at home. You get to try something that you want to do. I know it's within the constraints of your house and you have the kids around, but you have that capacity. If you're working, like for me, when I worked at a credit union in HR, I wouldn't have had the capacity or the space to really lean into doing something that I wanted to do in like a feminine way as easily. So, but again, you just have to be intentional about that. So like in the mornings with your cup of coffee, like leaning into that in the mornings. And then what can you do in the evenings just for yourself and shifting the mindset to be like, this is what I'm going to lean into and do for myself, not because I think my partner wants this, not because I think that my partner wants me to do this.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. And it takes that intentionality as well as boundaries, right? Good boundaries. So for me, being a single mom, there is only one person around, and my kids and I share space, right? And I don't ever want to not have them in my space. But I've now started to say, when my door is closed, you don't even knock. Don't bug mom. Figure it out, right? Because if I want to go into my room and like put on some lingerie or have a dance party or just need that moment to like honor my feminine, my kids need to know. And it's absolutely okay that I sit there and say, mom just needs 1 hour. Like, I'm like, when my door is open, you're fully welcome in. When my door is closed, that's my boundary. Right. And you can take that space even when they're there. Because a lot of moms, I say, like, they're like, to get out of the house is so hard, right? To get out of the house, to go for a walk or find that space. Because I know most of them won't take that space in their house, but fine, take that space in their house, but close the door and tell your kids there's a boundary, right? And it might take a little bit to enforce that boundary, but that they'll learn and they'll respect you more for it. Yeah. Because it also teaches them that they can set a boundary.
Yeah. One of my biggest things, and it's actually turning into a pet peeve of mine right now, is people complaining that they don't have a chance to go to the bathroom by themselves. And trust me, this is coming from a place of like, I've been there. Like I was the mom for years. It was like, I can never go pee by myself or whatever you need to do.
I don't even close the bathroom door.
Yeah. So, you know, and I wasn't either, but then I was complaining about it. But I realized like I'm complaining about not having the opportunity to go to the bathroom by myself, but I'm not closing and locking the door. If I want to go to the bathroom by myself, then now a lot of the times I tell the kids, like, I'm going to the bathroom, I'll be out in a minute. You know, it's okay to say that. Don't come bug me, is what I say respectfully. Please let me do what I need to do in the bathroom, and then I'll be out to get you breakfast or get you whatever it is you need. But I close the door, and I know Lily, my 2-year-old, doesn't necessarily understand that, but I close the door and I lock it so that she can't come in. And that's my way of setting a boundary. So I see that now with women just constantly complaining about never being able to go to the bathroom by themselves. And I'm like, close the door and lock it. I know your bathroom has a lock on that door. And are they going to be crying outside the bathroom? Possibly. It might happen a couple of times, but then they're going to understand. They will eventually understand that when the door is closed, you don't bug me. And you'll have to remind them gently, they'll probably forget or want to come in, or you won't lock the door and they'll barge on in. And there's honestly times where our doors are open. Like it's fine. The door is open. Everybody's in there. I'm tying shoes while I'm peeing or doing whatever. And, like we're combing hair and it's fine. And I'm okay with that. But if you do want to take a minute for yourself to use the bathroom, then you can do that. It's a lock. It's beautiful. It works wonderfully.
Yes. I always come back to thinking like, what is this teaching our kids? Right. Like many of us as adults struggle with boundaries, and we struggle with saying no. We struggle with all these different things because we were never taught it, but then we're teaching that exact same thing to our kids. And I know that was the biggest part in my journey that made me, that pushed me to actually step out of my marriage, is because who I was in my marriage, I did not like, and I did not want to, I was not happy with that woman, and I did not want to model that relationship to my kids. So I took that step away, right? Like we'll do so much for other people than we will do for ourselves. And so if you're putting yourself first, you're teaching your kids that it's okay to do that as well, especially the little girls.
Yes, I know. I'm really interested in all of this journey that you're going on. And, I had Pasha on the episode too, to kind of talk about the things that she's a really big advocate for. And a lot of that comes back to like being a mom. Like I want to model to them this beautiful feminine woman who's still like super motivated and ready, ready to like get after it. Like I just feel like there's that balance there and setting boundaries and still like leaning into all of that. So my question for you now is, have you lost friendships? Have you lost I don't want to say lost family because they're always around, but have you rubbed people the wrong way with this? Like, are people like, oh, I don't even know. Like, it's too much for me.
You know what? And it is difficult because when you realize you're on a journey where people don't quite understand, sometimes it does rub people the wrong way. I know my dad just doesn't get it. And he said to me, he's like, do you need to put a post out on Instagram in your underwear? And I'm like, he's like, well, at least it was the backside and you didn't see anything. And I was like, Dad, did you even read the post? Because the message behind it was a little bit different. It was like, see me, look at me. I'm here. I'm shedding off my layers and I am ready to stand out. I'm honoring my truth and I am honoring who I am. And I'm allowed to be sexy and I'm allowed to be sensual. And I'm sharing it because I know that this message isn't often heard. I grew up in Catholic school. I know how this message is suppressed in us. And if I trigger you, I get it and I understand. But it's also, it gives you an opportunity to look into that insecurity yourself. And that's what happened to me. That's actually how I started this feminine thing. As I was actually I did a call with Pasha and she was talking to me about, finding ways of pleasure and stuff. And I went down, I took my kids for a walk and there was these girls that got off of a boat and they were in string thonged bikinis and they were dancing like strippers. And I was like, whoa, those girls must be strippers. Like, cause we're in Kelowna and it's like, every once in a while you're like, there's really macho men and like little tiny girls and it's like, whatever. And I was like, whoa, wait just a second. I'm like, I'm actually jealous of them because they're on the middle of a dock in downtown, just flaunting their sexuality. And I'm judging them for it because it's making me feel insecure. So I went home and I put on a sexy lingerie and makeup and gave myself a photo shoot right on my bed with like some sexy music. And it was such an amazing thing. It was because I knew that I desired that. When I looked at them, I was like, I desire to really own who I am sexually and sensually. And I'm not doing it. Right. And so that it really was, it was a huge mirror for us. And I know that this work is triggering and it's meant to be triggering. But at the same time, if you look and choose to look in the mirror, you know that it's underneath, it's something that you desire. And maybe you don't want to, wear lingerie on the outside. That's totally fine. But maybe it is that you want to own even just feeling sexy in the bedroom. Like how many women can't even have sex with the lights on? Right? Because they just don't feel beautiful. And that's a shame because we are beautiful. And it doesn't matter if we're softer or if we're, we've got big hips and what cellulite, it doesn't matter. We are beautiful. And it's just a matter of owning that.
One of my very favorite parts of Eat, Pray, Love. Have you watched that movie with Julia Roberts?
Yes.
And they're eating the pizza and she's like, I can't eat this because I don't have I've gained like 12 pounds or whatever she said, and none of my pants fit. And Julia Roberts asks her, she's like, when you're ever in the bedroom with a man and you're naked, do they ever complain? And she's like, well, no. She's like, that's because they're not complaining. Like they're genuinely happy because they're in bed with the beautiful naked woman. Like they don't care if it's 10 pounds. Like you need to take care of your body for yourself, not because you feel like losing 10 or 15 pounds is what's going to make your husband attracted to you, like, or your spouse, whatever, your partner. They're already going to be attracted to you because you're naked in the bedroom. Like own it.
They won the lottery.
Yes, exactly. It's one of my favorite parts. And it's something that always sticks with me every time I watch that movie because it's so true. Like we are way too hard on ourselves. And And I think you brought up a really good point. Like maybe not everybody's going to ever get to the point where they're wearing lingerie on the outside. Like, and that's okay. But we're all at different places in our journeys, right? So like you're single, you're like living your truth and you have this beautiful, amazing opportunity to maybe be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe be like a little more openly vibrant to the world because you are trying to attract a partner in, and you're doing this in this beautiful feminine way. Whereas for us, or I don't want to say us, but for women that are in relationships, like we can still do that around our spouses to attract them, but also just doing it for yourself. Like that's where
Mhm.
it starts, is just doing it for yourself and then seeing what happens. I mean, what do you think about that? Like the difference between, I mean, you're coming at this from somebody who's single, and then there's a lot of listeners that are in marriage and they're like, I'm not going to wear lingerie on the outside. So what are your thoughts on channeling energy in that way?
I mean, it's true, right? Like it's, you want to do it for yourself. And the more that you actually do it for yourself, the more that you're going to want to do it for others. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you do put on like a sexy thing, then you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll send my husband a sexy photo,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, yes, it's going to be weird and uncomfortable at first, but I guarantee you'll get a ton of praise for it. He's not going to look at it and go, ooh, why'd she send that to me? Right?
Right.
He's going to
Yeah.
love the frick out of it. Like he's going to be like, oh my God, my wife is so attractive. And he's going to continue. Like we talk in relationships about how we lose that, like that lust for each other,
Mm-hmm.
but we stop feeling super good about ourselves and we stop like really letting ourselves be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so then our partner like forgets, or we reject their compliments. And so then they stop giving that compliment because you didn't receive it anyway. So why should they give it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we do those things, right, like treat your man like a king, decorate the bedroom, candles, and do a charcuterie board and get some really nice wine and have that ready for when he comes home. Send the kids
Mm-hmm.
off to grandma and grandpa's, whatever, and he will be like, what is this? Like, did I
Mm-hmm.
forget an anniversary? But he'll feel good. And I think so. If you come from that act of giving, but you do it, you're like, this actually is going to fill me up and I am going to receive pleasure just from pleasing my spouse.
Mm-hmm.
I think both partners, the more that they can do that, the more it fills each other up.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're giving from a space of like, if I give, then I need to get mine,
Mm-hmm.
then you're giving, but kind of also taking at the same time. So it doesn't fill either partner up. Right.
Right. Right.
So it's, yeah, like doing those things that you can do it for him. Right. I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the most empowering things a woman can do is do a boudoir photo shoot
Mm-hmm.
because they look at themselves a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You won't go through a whole hour of a boudoir shoot without feeling badass and sexy at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guarantee you will. Like at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
you're like,
Yeah.
but at the end, you're like, hell yes, I am sexy, right? Because you
Yes.
feel it and
Yeah.
you're moving into it, and you find a good photographer that's going to make you look amazing, put you in really awkward positions, but it looks really good on camera.
Mm-hmm.
You'll feel like a goddess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's such an important piece to do. It's like
Mm-hmm.
every single day I'm like, how can I honor my goddess? How can I honor my queen? How can I honor my feminine that I know that I am?
Mm-hmm. And there's so like you said, like there's so many different ways that you can do that, and it can be really catered to you. Like you've
Yeah.
talked before on, I think, our other podcasts, like you've done the work in writing down like what brings you joy and how
Mm-hmm.
difficult that is. And I think I was just on a call with one of my clients, and my challenge to her was to write down a list of things that brought her joy. And it's like, ugh, you like clench up. And I'm not expecting it to be easy. It's gonna be super hard. But what brings you joy and what makes you feel alive in that moment is going to be different than what somebody else feels, and that's okay. I think finding that independence is one of the biggest, most empowering things on this journey I think that you've been on from an outside perspective to me, because I'm like, okay, this is what's filling Sherysse up and this is what lights her up, but what fills me up? Like maybe I can lean into something separate based on like so many factors, right? Like based on where I live. Like I can't just easily go out and buy lingerie. So I think I mentioned this in the podcast before, when it was so sunny out, I was just sitting outside drinking my coffee topless in the mornings because I was like, the sun feels so good on my skin. I mean, how many women can say they sit outside in the mornings and drink their coffee topless? I'm one of them. I get to say that now, and I'm so proud of myself. But there's not very many of us that get to do that or take the time to do that. But I live in a rural area. You know, if you live in a like highly populated area, you're not going to sit outside topless comfortably and drink your coffee. But I can do that. So that's something that I can lean into within my own environment that really filled me up and really made me feel badass. Like, especially, you know, maybe you can't go do a boudoir photo shoot right now if things are still shut down, or you're not comfortable doing it because of COVID or whatever. Like, so can you do something on your own in your bedroom? Like, could you have your husband take a couple of pictures of you? Like, maybe you could play around with it, you know? I mean, there's definitely things, there's definitely options. But again, going back full circle, it takes that intentionality. It takes that step forward, and really trying to lean into that. So I can definitely see how this would be very intimidating for women if they haven't done some of that self-care work first. So, you know, for women that listen to this and they're like, oh my gosh, there's no way. I really think that we brought like a great picture. Sherysse, you did a great job of saying like, okay, but this is where you could start. You could start by really enjoying your cup of coffee. And then maybe you enjoy your cup of coffee with your shirt off, you know, if the kids are still in bed, and carving out that time and being really intentional with that time. And then taking like one more step, you know, instead of just like, you know, we talk about scheduling sex. We've talked about that on the podcast episodes a couple of times, like scheduling sex. So maybe instead of just scheduling sex this time, you take a super luxurious bath and then you put on lingerie while you're in the bathroom to then have sex on a Wednesday night. It doesn't have to be like the perfect moment, the perfect time. You can't, you know, the stars won't always align. So just maybe leaning into like little steps at a time and figuring out what does feel good. I mean, that's what it sounds like from my end, like my perspective in talking to you. And it's very inspiring for me to continue to just shift that mindset and that intentionality.
And it's doing things with intentionality, right? When you're preparing for sex night, right? Like shave your legs, but don't just get in the shower and shave them really fast. Like carve out a good hour for a bath, and maybe throw some rose petals and some milk in there and have like a beautiful milk bath, right? And then slowly shave your legs and then take your time putting lotion on, because women, our turn on isn't just in the moment. Like a man can get instantly turned on, like thought or whatever. Women, it's like you have to seduce the mind. And part of that is we can actually seduce ourselves, right? Like we can touch ourselves like we need to. I know forever, because I spend so much time on my own, I'm like constantly like just I'll like tickle my arm or like touch like my like cleavage and stuff, like just whatever I need to do to give myself that feeling that like, okay, yeah, you know, I am this sensual sexual person and I do deserve to be touched and loved, and I can give it to myself. I can own it myself.
I love that. And I will say a tip that has really helped me is actually reading the book, Reading Pussy, while I'm taking my bath, because it's like my pre-funk mind shift. Like if you read something and if you're, you know, you're diving into it and absorbing it, it's going to make you feel that way. You can't read that book without being a little bit turned on and starting to feel more sexual and sensual, and really leaning into that, like that feminine goddess, like she explains in the book. So I know we've talked about it before, but the book is such a and Sherysse, you've talked about it, like you dove in, you devoured it, and you like just dove in. For me, I'm not there yet. And I think that's okay to share, because, you know, that journey for self-care and with the kids still being young is still really evolving for me to get to this point where I'm really embracing my femininity and diving into that sexual, sensual side. It has come leaps and bounds even in the last year. But one of the ways that helps me is like reading that book while I take a bath it's like my pre-funk. I'm like getting my mind right. You think about like the Space Jam song before you start playing basketball or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's just a tip if people are kind of struggling with it. So, okay. So I know you need to probably get ready to go, but can you share with us the challenge you have coming up? Do you want to share that?
Yes. So in November, I am going to start a Solo Goddess Challenge, which is basically going to be learning how to date yourself and to be able to find ways to find desire and pleasure and joy, but doing it yourself. And it doesn't matter whether you're married, it doesn't matter whether you're single. We can all do this, and we all need to do this, because the more that we understand what turns us on, the more that we understand what we need and how we feel loved, the more that we can communicate that to our partners.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing a free 5-day challenge. We're going to have a Facebook group where you can connect with all the sisters in there. And I'm going to be going live and sharing some of my tips, and also giving you a challenge each day, whether that is to even just wear lingerie, like your sexiest piece of lingerie underneath your clothes, and go to work. Doesn't matter. Or clean the house all day in your sexiest piece of lingerie, whatever. Those little things that are just going to like help everybody just kind of feel a little bit more desired and a little bit more sexual and a little bit more sensual, and leaning into that.
I love it. And I love that you get to do it with a sisterhood. I love that you get
Yes.
to do it with other women. So you're not out here like, I don't know what I'm doing. And you can be very inspired. It's amazing what happens when you do these groups and these group challenges, because you feel so inspired by other people. And it's just this beautiful, safe space. So I'm super excited for you. I hope everybody gets in on this. If they're interested in doing the challenge, what is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So if they're interested in doing the challenge, find me on my Instagram handle, the Solo Goddess on Instagram. Instagram's all down today and not working, but hopefully it's back up in soon. And there will be a link where you can tag for to get in the email list, and
Awesome.
The email will come out when we're ready to go. So you guys will be able to get on that list. You'll be the first to know when that Solo Goddess Challenge actually starts.
That's awesome. And if people aren't, I want to just kind of add to that for you. If people aren't sure if they're like ready for this, or they have questions, or they're even like a little bit nervous, instead of not committing to it and saying like, no, I'm not quite there yet, I really encourage them. I encourage you, sweet mama, to reach out to Sherysse and just have a conversation, just like chat about it. You are where she was, these mamas are where you used to be. So it's not like you don't understand or you haven't been there. So I encourage people, before they just say, no, like I'm not even close to interested in this, to like reach out to you and figure out where to start, and figure out if the challenge is right for them before they just absolutely say no and get turned off. Because I think it's amazing. I think it's super amazing that you're doing this. And the fact that you're coming at it from somebody who's been on this complete journey, like I said in the beginning, I feel like we talk about self-care and there's this one side, and then you like read a book called Pussy, and it's like so extreme from one transition to another. So what the challenge is going to be able to do is it's going to help transition people. Like,
yeah, it's going to be like a gentler ease in.
Right. Yes.
Because like I read Pussy and I was like, I put it into action as best as I could, but I was like, this all seems really scary, but I did it, even though it was scary and even though it was uncomfortable. I was like, no, I knew that's what I needed. But yes, there's a little space in between that like we can grow into.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on today, Sherysse. As always, I love our chats. I love our conversations, and I'm super thankful for this podcasting platform so that we can stay in touch and just all be journeying down this road of exploration that you've been on together. And I'm so proud of you for inspiring others. And I love what you and Amy are doing too, both leaning into your individual spaces, because I know that was really hard for you guys to make that decision to kind of branch off. It's not like you're splitting up. You're still super, super close, and you're both going to lean into each other. But I look at it from this beautiful standpoint of like, you can touch that many more women, like you can reach that many more people by having those spaces, and then also leaning into each other when you can. So I'm proud of you guys. I'm super grateful to have you in my life and on the podcast. And I thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. And as always, like I appreciate our friendship. So Yeah, I'm grateful for this space and to meet other amazing moms that are doing such amazing jobs. So
yes. So we'll stay in touch and probably have you back on to see what you've come up with next.
perfect.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, Sherysse.
Bye.
Hey, sweet mama. Thank you so much for joining me in today's conversational journey with Sherysse. She is incredible. I'm constantly inspired by her. I was super inspired by her when I met with her and Amy and had our podcast recording, The Evolution of Mom. And I've continued to follow her and continue to learn from her and be inspired by her. So I encourage you to follow her Solo Goddess Instagram handle. I'll put everything in the show notes below. Please remember, if you found any value in this conversation today, if it made you laugh, if it made you cry, it made you think differently in any way, shape, or form, I really, really would appreciate it if you shared this for me. That's the only fee that we ask for this show. It's a free podcast full of free content and inspirational stories from incredible people. So please give us a share today so we can help spread this word. I really believe that one podcast episode can change somebody's life. I truly, truly believe that. And we're all trying to shift our perspectives, shift our mindset on a daily basis. So please give us a share today. With that being said, please remember that I believe in you, I care about you, and I'm so incredibly proud of you. So go out, buy yourself a cute nightie, some lingerie, and try it on tonight. I challenge you. I challenge you to take some action steps in this episode with Sherysse. Remember, it takes more than just listening. It takes doing to change your day and to shift your mindset and to shift and change your life. Thank you so much for listening today, sweet mama. I look forward to talking to you again soon.